Before we begin, take a breath. This isn't just a podcast. It's a new way to think, speak, and live in English. Welcome to Coffluent Podcast, where words flow, confidence grows, and every sip brings you closer to fluency. So to start us off today, I want you to imagine something. Imagine your manager calls you into their office this afternoon.
Oh boy. Never a good start.
Right. You sit down and they slide a manila envelope across the desk. You are being laid off, effective immediately.
Ugh. You can just feel your stomach drop just hearing that.
Exactly. Just absolute panic. And for the vast majority of people listening right now, that scenario is a complete five-alarm crisis. But today, we are doing a deep dive into a framework from this classic 1980s personal finance book. It's called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez.
Yeah, a real foundational text.
It really is. And the wild thing is, this framework argues that getting that pink slip, it could actually mechanically become the greatest opportunity you ever receive.
Which sounds completely backwards to how most of us are wired, but we are really looking at a complete architectural rebuild of how we view work and, well, wealth.
Yeah.
We aren't here to dissect, complex day trading algorithms or how to build a massive real estate empire.
Right. None of the get-rich-quick stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The core thesis we are unpacking today is about how we literally trade our life energy. Like the finite hours we have on this planet, we trade that for money, and how reversing the polarity of that trade can literally buy back your freedom.
But, recognizing that you might be trapped in a bad trade is really only half the battle here. Before anyone can fix their relationship with money, the book says they have to run this brutal diagnostic on where they currently stand.
Oh, yeah. And it is not a comfortable test.
Not at all. The framework starts by forcing you to answer some deeply uncomfortable questions. And it actually bypasses your bank account entirely and looks straight at your lifestyle.
Right, which is so different from most finance books.
Totally. It asks things like, are you spending meaningful time with your family and friends? When you walk through your front door at 6 p.m., are you full of life, or are you physically and emotionally hollowed out?
Which is such a striking image.
And the big one. Could you survive for 6 months without a paycheck? If the answer to even one of those is no, the authors basically suggest your whole financial operating system is broken.
And you have to notice the metrics being used there. It's not asking for your credit score.
Right.
It's not looking at your portfolio yield. It's diagnosing your financial health through the lens of your physical and emotional exhaustion.
Yeah, which makes so much sense when you look at the stats.
It really does.
Yeah.
Looking at the broader economic reality makes it crystal clear why so many people are exhausted. The source highlights this crazy statistic. Around the year 2005, the personal savings rate in the United States actually fell below zero.
Below zero. That is just staggering.
Right. And it has hovered around the 0 to 1% mark for years, which means statistically, the average person is saving absolutely nothing.
Basically, every dollar that enters the checking account leaves it just as fast, if not faster. And the source makes the point that this isn't just an accident of poor math, It is a systemic push into debt.
Oh, absolutely.
People are taking on massive leverage for houses, financing depreciating assets like cars, and just rolling over credit card balances month after month.
Yeah, and the argument here actually goes so far as to compare this perpetual cycle to a modern iteration of slavery.
Wow.
I mean, it's a heavy word, but the idea is that your future labor is completely bound to your current creditors. You owe them your future time.
Because you've already spent the money. It's what the framework calls a consumer culture matrix, or this pervasive Brave New World mentality.
Yes, that endless spending loop.
Exactly. The societal programming constantly reinforces the idea that, meaning and comfort come exclusively through endless spending and instant gratification.
Right. You have a terrible day at a job you dislike.
So you buy a new television to soothe the exhaustion of the job.
Exactly. But now you have a payment on that television, which locks you even tighter into the job you dislike.
It's a trap. The book demands that you completely unhook from that feedback loop, replacing endless desire with deliberate financial discipline. Okay, let's unpack this for a second. If debt is an anchor tying you to a boss you find intolerable, then savings isn't just some abstract number on a digital screen. Savings is a pair of scissors to cut that rope.
I love that analogy, and that really reframes the entire purpose of money. The objective isn't accumulating a giant pile of cash just to hoard it.
Right.
The objective is acquiring autonomy. People who apply this specific framework routinely manage to cut their living expenses by 25% within just a mere 6 months.
25% is huge.
And it gets better.
Mm.
Eventually, some achieve a savings rate of 50% or more of every single paycheck.
Okay, slashing 50% of your expenses sounds fantastic until you actually look at a budget. I mean, how do people practically pull that off without living a life of total deprivation and misery?
Well, the primary mechanism for that massive drop in spending is actually psychological, not mathematical. It involves completely severing the habit of comparing yourself to your neighbors.
Oh, keeping up with the Joneses.
Exactly. When you actively stop caring about the badge on your coworker's car or the label on your neighbor's clothes, a massive portion of your so-called required spending just evaporates overnight.
Because you aren't trying to impress anyone anymore.
Right. You are no longer paying a premium to maintain a specific social standing in the matrix.
But, unhooking from societal expectations still leaves the reality of fixed expenses. You still have to pay bills. The authors do dive heavily into alternative wealth generation, right?
Yeah, they talk a lot about developing do-it-yourself skills, sharing tools with neighbors, learning to repair an appliance instead of just tossing it in the landfill.
But there is a personal anecdote in the materials we are reviewing that pushes this concept to a pretty extreme edge.
Oh, the van story.
Yes, the van story. So one individual decided to audit their spending by tracking every single receipt to see where the financial bleed was happening. And the glaring realization was that housing, like the monthly rent check, was just devouring the lion's share of their income.
Which is true for almost everyone. Housing is universally the heaviest weight on the monthly ledger. It dictates how many hours you must work just to maintain a baseline existence.
Right. So to combat that heavy weight, this individual moved out of a comfortable apartment and into something tiny and cheap. But they didn't stop there.
No, they took it a lot further.
They eventually took the radical step of moving into an old paid-off car and later a van, specifically to drive their rent down to absolute zero.
Zero rent. Imagine that.
It's crazy. And by eliminating their largest fixed expense entirely, their required monthly income just plummeted. They only needed to work part-time. They took entire summers off, living with the schedule of a university student, just because their time was no longer mortgaged to a landlord.
Which is incredible. They centered their life around their time, rather than centering it around their employment. It forces a fundamental reordering of priorities. By taking the housing expense out of the equation, you immediately buy back 40 hours of your week.
Okay, I get the math, but I have to push back hard here. Trading square footage for time sounds great on paper, but living in a van down by the river.
It sounds a bit much, I know.
Right. Are you telling someone with 2 toddlers who share a wall with a home office to abandon their house and move into a vehicle? I mean, does this entire philosophy require an endless tolerance for misery and discomfort? What about someone with a family? Does this system completely break down?
That's a fair point, but I think it sounds absurd if you view the van as a mandatory instruction rather than just a stress test of a universal rule.
Okay, a stress test. How so?
The van is just the extreme edge of the spectrum. The underlying mechanism is about drastically cutting your largest fixed expense to create a structural financial surplus.
So it's the principle, not the literal van.
Exactly. For a family of 4, applying this principle doesn't mean moving into a Honda Civic. It means actively resisting the societal urge to constantly upgrade your lifestyle the moment your income increases.
Ah, so it's about defining what enough is, rather than always defaulting to more.
Precisely. The source material notes that babies don't actually require massive amounts of capital or space initially.
True. They're pretty small.
Right. A family can simply choose to stay in a modest 2-bedroom apartment rather than taking on a crushing 30-year mortgage just to secure a guest bedroom and a slightly more prestigious zip code.
So the ultimate trade-off isn't about giving up comfort.
No, not at all. It's asking you to analyze the psychology of comfort. If a smaller house means you only have to work 4 days a week instead of 5, or if it allows one parent to stay home, you are trading physical space for temporal freedom, hours of your life back.
Which brings us to the psychological hurdle of actually tracking every penny. Because if you are going to make these trade-offs, you have to know exactly where the life energy is flowing.
Yes, the tracking is crucial.
But why does tracking a $5 coffee purchase actually change behavior? I mean, it's just $5.
Because it creates immediate emotional friction. When you mindlessly tap a credit card, there is no pain. It's too easy.
It feels like fake money sometimes.
Exactly. But when you were forced to translate that $5 into the exact number of minutes you had to sit at a desk you dislike just to earn it, the thrill of the purchase dies. You are actively rewiring your dopamine response.
Oh, wow. So you stop seeing a pair of shoes as costing $80 and start seeing them as costing 10 hours of your irreplaceable life.
That's exactly it. And once you've built that friction, hacked your expenses, and reclaimed your time, you start moving through the specific milestones of financial evolution outlined in the book.
Right, because you can't just penny pinch and avoid forever. Where does this discipline actually lead?
Well, the journey begins with level 1, which is financial intelligence.
And what does that look like?
This means you have absolutely zero consumer debt, no credit card balances, no car loans, and you have stockpiled at least 6 months of normal living expenses in cash.
Having that cushion must feel amazing.
Oh, reaching level 1 fundamentally alters your physiology. The source emphasizes that when you know an unexpected flat tire or a medical bill won't plunge you into ruin, the baseline anxiety that hums in the background of modern life just vanishes.
You operate from a place of security rather than a place of survival.
Exactly. It brings this profound peace and confidence, which clears the mental bandwidth required to tackle level 2, which is financial integrity.
Financial integrity. And this is where the system demands some pretty brutal honesty, right? You have to align every single financial decision with your internal value system.
Yeah, this is the auditing phase.
Yeah.
Once you have that level 1 cushion, you examine every outgoing dollar against what you claim is important to you.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let's say you tell yourself that health and fitness are your top priorities in life. But when you look at your spending over the last 90 days, you see $400 spent on fast food convenience and a canceled $40 gym membership.
Ouch. Yeah, the numbers don't lie.
They really don't.
Yeah.
That is a lack of financial integrity. Your capital is not flowing toward your stated values. It is flowing toward momentary convenience.
So level 2 is about plugging those leaks and ensuring your life energy is only traded for things that genuinely enhance your existence.
Exactly. And once you've secured the cushion and you've aligned your spending with your values, then you hit the summit. Level 3, financial independence.
The holy grail.
This is the point of absolute autonomy. At this point, you no longer need to work for money.
Wait, really? You just stop working?
Well, you can still work if you want to, if you find deep purpose in your career. But you have enough saved and invested that you can live completely free of a job. The passive income covers your newly streamlined, highly efficient living expenses.
You are entirely free from the necessity of a paycheck.
Yes. And the source explicitly contrasts this specific brand of independence with other popular financial philosophies, like Robert Kiyosaki's famous book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge one. How do they compare?
Well, Kiyosaki's approach is heavily focused on becoming extremely wealthy. It requires building massive businesses, making amazing investments, managing employees, and taking on significant risk.
It's a high-stakes game designed to make you phenomenally rich.
Right, which is very difficult. But becoming truly rich requires a rare tolerance for risk and stress. And frankly, not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur.
Definitely not.
So the framework in your money or your life focuses solely on becoming free. And the source points out that becoming free is much easier than becoming rich.
Because the finish line isn't $1 billion.
Exactly. The finish line is simply covering your own dialed-down expenses. Anyone, even a public school teacher or a social worker on a modest salary, can absolutely achieve level 3 using this system because their target number is so much lower.
So what does this all mean? It's almost like the difference between training to win a gold medal at the Olympics versus just training to be healthy enough to never visit the hospital.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. One is highly stressful and only for the elite, but the other, just being healthy and free, is something almost anyone can pull off.
Absolutely. The psychology is entirely different. It encourages you to stop worshiping money as a source of happiness. It just doesn't buy happiness.
It just simply removes financial stress from your life.
Exactly. You start viewing it purely as a mechanical tool to remove anxiety. It is a wrench designed to tighten the bolts of your life and buy back your time.
We have covered massive ground on this deep dive today. We started by looking at the diagnostic test for the consumer matrix, recognizing that debt is basically an active trap.
Modern slavery, as they called it.
Right, and we explored the realization that time is vastly more valuable than money. We talked about the power of targeting your largest structural expense like housing to create a massive surplus.
Whether that's moving into a van or just skipping the huge mortgage.
Exactly. And finally, we looked at the attainable goal of becoming financially free through the 3 levels, rather than exhausting yourself trying to become phenomenally rich.
It's such a freeing perspective.
It really is. So, to you, the listener, As you navigate your week, I challenge you to look at the transactions you are making. Consider the things you're buying. Are those things genuinely worth the irreplaceable hours of your life energy you had to trade away to get them?
That is the ultimate calculation right there.
It is. And we want to leave you with a final thought experiment to wrestle with on your own. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning and you have officially crossed the threshold into level 3. You are financially independent.
Just put yourself in that mental space for a second.
Your rent is covered, your debt is entirely gone, and you know with absolute certainty that you never have to clock in for a paycheck ever again. Once the initial novelty of sleeping in wears off, what would you actually do on a random Tuesday morning?
That is the real question.
Because the sooner you know the answer to that, the easier it becomes to stop buying things you don't need. True wealth is simply having the time to do what makes life meaningful. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.